How's it going, fellow aquarists? My name is Ken and welcome back to Aqua Lab Uncensored. Today I'm with my teammate.
My name is Alex.
And we're going to be showing you how to set up a Brazilian style planted aquascaped aquarium. But before we get to that, I'd actually like to introduce you a little bit more to Alex and have him tell you a little bit about his experience in the hobby so far and just some of his personal findings with his planted aquariums that he's observed up to this point in time.
Alright, so my name is Alex. I've been doing this for just under a year now. My first planted aquarium I bought from Aqua Lab before I started to work here. It was a 90-gallon. And it went really well, so that inspired me to continue to try new things and set up different tanks. So now today I have several reef tanks. I have about 5 planted tanks, and I've experimented with all sorts of different types of plants and equipment and techniques, and I'm very eager to continue to learn, and I'm proud of what I've learned today. So originally when I started my first planted tank, I went with the most commonly recommended method, just adding a proper nutrient-rich planted aquarium substrate, and that was all I added, and I had pretty good results. The plants grew in fine, although it did, in my experience, take quite a while for them to really start to acclimate to grow in the aquarium. As I started doing this for a bit longer and started watching some tutorial videos on YouTube, I found several techniques, mainly the ADA strategy, starting with several layers of substrate to ensure the plants have adequate nutrition up front and also down the line as well. The most common one I found was basically adding a base layer of ADA power sand and then sprinkling the ADA additives on top of that, and then topping that with the Amazonia aqua soil. And in my experience, I noticed the quickest growth. I noticed the plants really start to explode very fast after planting. And I've never had such great success with plants. Alright, so I laid out as many materials as I could think that I'll need today for the little project we got going on. I'll start with the substrate system I'm going to install in the tank first thing. So as I mentioned earlier, basically going to start with some power sand, which is some kind of coarse, gravelly, porous material, which is a really solid base layer for the aquarium. It's going to help with the nutrients long term. And then after I got that set up how I wanted, I'm going to lay down the additives that we have over there. We got Clear Super by ADA and the Tourmaline VC, and then we have the Bacteria 100. And then after I do those 2 steps, I'm gonna basically put my first layer of Amazonia aqua soil in the tank, and then after that I should be able to start hardscaping. And I tried to lay out as many rocks as I could to have as many different options as I can have for the aquascape, so I did that right here. Hopefully that will help me put it together in a more hastily fashion. Obviously the size of the rocks range from really small to really big, which is pretty important. I'm going to be putting some of the power sand in these mesh bags, which will basically help support the rocks and the substrate even more. And then I laid out basically some tools here to help me shape the substrate. I find that paintbrushes work the best. Obviously, don't ever use a used paintbrush. Make sure it's for aquarium use only. Just some various other tools, some containers for pouring in substrates or cosmetic sand, and then other various stuff here. We already have basically the ADA light screen set up on the aquarium, the self-leveling mat underneath, which I think is always a good thing to add. Alright, so today we're going to be doing pressurized CO2 in the aquarium. It's a high-tech setup with high lighting. So this is boxed right now, but it's a 2.5-pound CO2 tank, so that should be adequate for this system. So I'm going to be using an inline diffuser, which goes in line with the canister filter. I feel like it disperses the CO2 more evenly throughout the tank. And also you get less algae on the diffuser since there's less light on the outside of the aquarium. So I'm going to go with this guy. I'm a fan of glass lily pipes, so we're going to do a basic lily outflow pipe and just a standard straight inflow, both 1/2-inch diameter. For the CO2 system, you always got to run a check valve, so we got one of those. one of the regulators that we sell at the store. I have a couple of these. They seem to work really well, so we're going to go with that one. And then for the canister filter, this is a replica of ADA's canister filter. The brand name, I believe, is SteelJet. And we have one running on our tanks, and it seems to work really well at a fraction of the price. And we had one laying around, so we're going to go ahead and use this today for the aquarium. We're running a Twin Star S series on the tank. It's a very high light setup. It's raised off the aquarium slightly to give you more of an open view of the aquarium. Alright, so over here, this is going to come later in the scape, but I set up as many plants that we had on hand that I think would work well for this tank. So kind of starting with the foreground plants, and then the midground, and then the rear stem plants in the back there. We have some Liliopsis brasiliensis, some dwarf hairgrass. I'm basically going to try to use this plant more in the front, and then use the dwarf hairgrass more in the rear to create a little bit of depth. I'm thinking about using Utricularia gramifolia in the front for carpeting. And then I'm going to try Glossostigma on this tank as well. So hopefully that will be a good arrangement of carpeting plants for the front section of the aquarium. Towards the midground, we have some Pogostemon helferi, which is a plant I really like. And then we have also some S. repens I'm going to put in there. This is one of my favorite plants, and I think it's a solid midground plant. This is kind of an oddball, but I have this plant running on one of my tanks at home. It's called Ranunculus inundactus. But this plant is a stem plant. It sends out runners. It will sometimes grow tall on you, but if you trim it properly, you can keep it looking more of like a bushy effect, which will be good for more of a mid-ground situation. We have some AR Mini, which is a good plant. It's pretty delicate in my experience, but I might try to throw some in there if we can find a place for it. And this is one of the plants I've tried for the first time recently in one of my newest tanks, and I've had some really good luck with it. It's done really well, and it has a beautiful reddish hue to it. And it looks very similar to AR Mini, just with thinner leaves. So I'm going to give that a try as well. So that pretty much covers the carpeting, the mid-ground. And then going to the back of the aquarium, I really want some tall stem plants to fill out the back area. So I'm going to be using Rotala Macandra yellow, some Rotala Atra, which is a great plant, and then some Ludwigia super red as well. So hopefully combination of those three will really fill out the back section of the aquarium. And with that, I think we're ready to start scaping. So today I'm just going to run through the equipment I set up on the tank and how I did some of the wiring and organization of the tubes and stuff like that. So starting with the filter system, I'm using glass lily pipes. Pretty good for diffusing the flow, and it has a really clean look. You can see through the glass and it doesn't take away from the Aquascape. It was kind of tricky on this setup because basically there's no holes or any way to get the filter pipes straight down to the canister. So I ended up using these barb fitting elbows here to kind of make the tubes clean and go behind the table here for a nice clean look. We're also using the inline diffuser, which just keeps more equipment out of the tank, and it disperses the CO2 pretty well throughout the tank. We also added an algae inhibitor by Twinstar, which is this diffuser here connected to a controller on the side of the tank, which releases micro bubbles and helps kill algae spores before it becomes an issue in the tank. So a couple little things I did, which I think are very simple to do, but add a lot to the aesthetic appeal of the aquarium, is just simple cable management. So I just got these off Amazon. They're just adhesive clips that you can just easily apply to the side of the glass to keep all your cables kind of tucked away, not obstructing the view of the aquascape, as you can see on the side there. So the filter I use for this tank is basically a replica of ADA's filter. This is my first time using it, but setting it up was very simple, and it seems to be a very good flow range for this aquarium. Not too much flow where it kicks up everything and stirs everything around. It has a really clean look to it as well. It's all stainless steel. I installed a couple of these quick disconnect taps, so I'm able to shut off the flow when the canister needs to be serviced, or if I need to remove the filter pipes or tubes or anything like that. We are running a 2.5 pound pressurized CO2 tank here with an Archaea regulator. I'm using the ADA CO2 tubing for the first time, and I'm really liking it because it's flexible and easy to remove, unlike the standard CO2 tubing. So pretty simple setup, but in my opinion looks pretty clean, very functional. So I just washed off all the plants so they're good to go. Basically right now all I have to do is take each clump and just separate them into tiny portions that will be ideal for spreading one portion out through all the areas where I want to plant the plant. So it's pretty simple once it's clean. This is Monte Carlo, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically tear it, just kind of like break it up a little bit. And there's different ways to do it, but this way has just worked for me. So I'm basically just going to just tear off little tiny clumps. And just basically prepare those for planting.